Right. So, namaste, everybody, and I welcome you to this introductory session on the Vedas. I would like to dedicate this session to the memory of two people. One is my late grandfather, Swami Vidyanand Vidya, who practically spent his entire life dedicated to the study and spread of Vedas. He founded Ved Sansthan, which brings you the webinar today. He also wrote about 100 books on Vedas, Yoga, Gita, and many other topics of contemporary interest. Also, the second person is my father, Shri Abhayadev Sharma. He was also equally passionate about Vedas. He was an eminent scholar in the subject of Vedas. He did his doctorate in the field of Yajna, the rituals, and he has also written many books, some of which have been published so far. Many others are yet to be published, and we hope to get them published in the near future. The organization that I mentioned, which brings you this webinar today, is Ved Sansthan. It's based in Delhi. And Ved Sansthan conducts a whole lot of programs on spreading the knowledge about Vedas. All of these programs are free for everybody, whether the in-person programs that we used to conduct before the coronavirus struck the world or the current online programs. Everything is free, but people are welcome to donate if they find this cause of interest to them. So this session is going to be an introductory session. It is meant for people who are new to the concept of Vedas, who have practically no knowledge about Vedas. Maybe they have an interest, maybe they have heard about Vedas and they are curious to know what Vedas are, but it is not a very in-depth kind of a session because it's a first level program that we are going to have. Different people may have different interests when it comes to learning about Vedas. Some people may be interested in it from the religious or devotional perspective. Some people may be interested in it from the perspective of spirituality at a higher level. Some other people might be interested in it from the perspective of, say, how was the life and society in the days of Vedas? So different people may have different interests. Some people may be curious about the roots of Indian philosophy, heritage, and culture which emanates from Vedas, or curiosity about the historical or scientific aspects in Vedas, or maybe just plain curiosity about nothing specific, but about Vedas in general. So in this session today, we will provide some background information about the Vedas and the Vedic literature. We will also look at a few selected verses or texts chosen from the Vedas and see what kind of thoughts are present in the various books that are collectively known as the Vedas. So let me first talk about what Vedas are. So it refers to a collection of 4 books named Rigved, Yajurved, Samved, and Atharved. These are the most ancient texts that are available in India and perhaps anywhere in the world. They have been written in Vedic Sanskrit, which is different from the modern Sanskrit, just like the biblical English is quite different from the modern English that we use. Mostly, the Vedic text is poetic verses, and we are going to have a look at some of them. And some of them are in the form of prose also. Perhaps you already know that Vedas are the foundation of almost everything of Indian philosophy, the culture, the religions, even though Vedas don't talk about what we today call about the Hindu dharma or the other dharmas or religions. The concept of dharma in Veda, as we'll see a little later, is not bound by any particular ritualistic set of beliefs and so on. The Vedic verses are used in almost all the celebrations that we have in the Hindu religion as of today. And that makes it one of the world's oldest religious texts in continuous use anywhere in the world. Vedas are also the source of a lot more apart from philosophy, the culture, the traditions, and so on. For example, they are also the source of Indian mathematics, astrology, music, science. Even though with the passage of time, the roots of Indian thoughts have been kind of lost on most people, but indirectly, everything that is in the Vedas has influenced the current thinking, the thought process that we have among the Indians. Vedas cover a very wide range of topics. Here, I don't have to read out this entire list, but as you can see, it's a very wide range of topics that the Vedas cover. And therefore, we can say that they are essentially an encyclopedia of our ancient thought as it existed in ancient times. So here is perhaps a first look on the text of the Vedas for many of you. This is a cover of Rigved Samhita, one of the four Vedas. The biggest Samhita is Rigved Samhita. This book is about 1,000 pages big. About 750 pages are the mantras and the others are the indexes and so on. And I'm going to just show you the first 3 pages from the Rigved Samhita, one of the 4 Vedas. So this is the first page. So you can see that there are various mantras, as we call them in Sanskrit and Hindi, or verses, as we can call them in English. So you can see 9 verses in one grouping, and then there are 6 more, and it continues in the subsequent pages. So this is just a glimpse of how the Vedic text looks like. Let us look at the first of the mantras from Rigved, the text which is highlighted here. Agnimide purohitam yajnasya devam ritvijam hotaram ratnadhatamam. R1.1.1 is the address of this verse, that it is from the first mandal of Rigved. Within that, there are multiple hymns or suktas, as we call them in Sanskrit. So it is the first sukta of the first mandal, and this is the first mantra or the first verse of that first sukta. I have given the simplified text in the next line. In Sanskrit, we have compound words. We have words being combined together. This is called sandhi. So agnim ide gets written as agnim ide. We have compound words in many other languages also. In English, we write do not as don't, right? So this is one example of compound words. We are not getting into Sanskrit grammar, but I have just broken up the words from the first verse in a simplified form in the second line. And if you cannot read the Devanagari script, there is the text written here with the Roman letters. Let me spend a few minutes on talking about this first verse in detail. We are not going to talk about many verses in so much detail as the first one that we look at. Let me try to explain it word by word to you. Agnim ide. It means that I praise or I worship Agni. In our Indian tradition, especially in the Hindu religion, whenever we start any new work or any celebration, we invoke the blessings of the family god, as we may call it. So we write Shri Ganeshaya Namaha, or we say Om, right? So it's our Indian tradition that we start anything, any new activity, any celebration, etc., with a worship, a praise of something. So Rigved also begins with the praise of Agni. What is Agni? Agni is a god. It's a divine power. There are many gods. And you might have a question. Does it mean that Vedas are polytheistic or are they monotheistic? We will come to that a little later. So Agni is a god, a divine power. Literally, in Hindi, it means fire. And the Agni god does manifest itself or himself as physical fire. So the Rishi, the person who's writing this verse, says that I worship, I praise Agni. And then there are a lot of qualities, adjectives of Agni given here. Purohitam. Now, in the modern Hindi, we might think that Purohit means the priest, but that's not the meaning here. It is Purah Hitam. So it's a compound word. Purah means in front, or it could also mean in the east direction. Hitam means placed, established. So Agni is kept in front of me, or it is kept in the east direction. Agni is also Yajnasya Devam. Agni is the god of this ritual. So I'm worshipping Agni, who's the god of this ritual. Agni is also the Ritvij. So he is also the Hota of this Yajna. So it sounds a little surprising. Agni is the Devta also, he is the performer of the Yajna. So there is a lot of symbolism in Vedic verses. Vedic verses kind of show us that the rituals that we perform are a representation, a mimicking of the rituals that kind of happen in the universe. So the devtas are performing the yajna of running the entire universe, and we human beings try to emulate that. Agni is also the Ratna Dha Tamam. Ratna is jewel in the modern interpretation, but in Vedic Sanskrit, it is not really jewel, it is virtues. Ratna Dha Tamam means he's the highest beholder of the virtues. We are trying to get inspiration from Agni to provide us the virtues. He's the highest beholder of the virtues. So the meaning of this first verse is that I praise or I worship Agni, who is established in front of me, who's the god of this ritual, who's also the performer of this ritual. He's also another officer of the ritual, and he is the highest beholder of the virtues. I request him to provide those virtues to me, that being the intention here. I'm going to toggle between the description of one verse or mantra and some background information about the Vedas, their history, the authors, the devtas, how the Vedic text was preserved over centuries. So I'm going to toggle between these two aspects. So having looked at the first mantra or the verse, let us talk about the concept of Rishi or the sage. The verses in Vedas are associated with Rishis. So here you can see this highlighted text shows that Madhuchanda Vaishwamitraha. Madhuchanda is the name of the person who is the son of Vishwamitra. He is the Rishi of all the 9 mantras in this suit. Madhuchanda Vaishwamitra also happens to be the Rishi of the second suit, all the 9 mantras. So what is the concept of Rishi and who created the Vedas? The traditional Indian belief is that Vedas are apaurushaya. They are not man-made. The Vedas were created by God at the start of the universe, and the rishis just saw those mantras with divine inspiration based on their tapasya, that is intense meditation. So it is said that Rishi mantra drashta. Rishi only sees the mantra, he does not write the mantra. He is not the creator of the mantra. A further extension to this belief is that the Vedas were created by the 4 mouths of Brahma, Agni, Vayu, Surya. They got 3 of the 4 Vedas by their tapasya, and Rishi Atharva discovered the 4th Veda. At the end of the universe, as per the Indian traditional belief, the Vedas also go away, and when the universe is recreated, so we have this concept that the universe is an endless cycle of creation and destruction. When the universe gets recreated, the Vedas appear again. The compilation of Vedas was done by Ved Vyas, the various mantra as they were seen by the various rishis. Alternative Indian belief is that the rishis wrote the mantras by divine inspiration. They are the creators, they are the writers of the mantras. And there is another saying here, Namah Rishibhyo Mantra Krityah, which says that I'm respecting the rishis who are the creators of the verses. Obviously, the neutral, independent scholars would believe that Vedas were written by humans. And this kind of beliefs of the divine source of the rituals of the original religious books, this is found in other religions, including Christianity and Islam also. The independent scholars estimate Vedas have been composed by different rishis at different points of time, somewhere between 1800 and 1200 BC. But Indian historians believe that Vedas have been composed much, much earlier than that. And there is indeed a challenge in accepting that if the Vedas were written, let's say by 1200 BC, how could the subsequent vast literature which provides commentaries on Vedas and then Ramayana, Mahabharata, Upanishads, all of these came, and then came Gautam Buddha, who denounced many of the things from the religion as it existed then. So this was too short a period of time to have happened in the days when there was no internet, no technology. So Indian historians believe that Vedas were composed much earlier, thousands of years earlier. As I said, I'm going to toggle between some Vedic concepts and discussion about selected Vedic mantras. So I'll take another mantra here, which is one of the most popular, most famous mantras or verses known as the Gayatri mantra, which goes like this: Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahe Dhiyo Yonah Prachodayat. Although most often we hear it with Bhur Bhuva Swaha prepended to this mantra, but in this location where it first appears in Rigveda, the text Bhur Bhuva Swaha does not appear. It does appear at another place. This mantra appears at multiple places in the Vedas, showing the importance of this mantra. So here is the anglicized text of this verse, and here is the word-to-word meaning of that. But the meaning of this word, as shown in the last sentence here, is that we meditate on that most desirable brilliance of the god Savita. So this mantra is targeted towards the god Savita, which is the sun god. And that brilliance of the god Savita inspires our intellect. So going a little deeper into the term Veda and Vedic literature, Ved means knowledge. It comes from a Sanskrit verb vid, which is about knowledge. And from this verb, we have other words in Hindi. For example, Vidwan, the person who has knowledge. Vidya, something which is related to knowledge. So Ved means knowledge. So the 4 books of Vedas are the books of knowledge. They are also called Samhita, which literally means something collected. They also are called Shruti, which means that they are heard. We will talk about this word Shruti a little later. What is the reason why Vedas are called Shruti? Here is a brief look at the subject matter of the Vedas. Rigveda has about half of the verses of the 4 Vedas, about 10,000 out of 20,000 verses are in Rigveda. And the primary subject of Rigveda is praise and worship of the various gods. It is about purity of thought and knowledge. The verses in Rigveda are typically called Richa, which is a poetic construct used for praise or laudation of a god. Yajurveda, the second Veda, has about 2,000 verses. It describes the processes of various rituals, and it is about purity of actions. Yajurveda has verses in poetry form as well as in the prose form, so it's a combination. Samveda, the third Veda, also having about 2,000 verses, is related to singing. It is about the purity of worship. Most of the mantras in Samveda are repetition of mantras from Rigveda for the purpose of singing in front of the gods when the rituals are being performed. There are very few original verses in Samveda. And fourthly, we have Atharveda. It has a collection of various miscellaneous topics, including health, medicines, psychology, warfare, responsibilities of the kings. It's a collection of various topics. So we have the 4 Samhitas, but I'm going to give a brief idea about some of the additional Vedic literature that is available. So apart from the Samhitas, there is also the concept of Brahmins. Brahman is the collective name of some books. It has nothing to do with the caste Brahman. We have Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. The Brahman Granths have nothing to do with the caste system of Brahmans. The Brahman Granths provide an explanation for the rituals and the symbolism. For example, Agni being a god and an officer of the yajna. So what is the symbolism in that? That kind of thing is explained in the Brahman Granthas. They provide directions as to how the rituals should be conducted using these verses, and they also expound the scientific aspect of the Vedic knowledge. So each Samhita has its own Brahman Granths. So for Rigved Samhita, you have some Brahman Granth that explains the rituals and symbolism pertaining to the mantras of that Ved, and likewise for the other Samhitas also. Then we also have Aranyaks. Again, each Aranyak is for a specific Ved Samhita, and these Aranyaks provide the philosophy behind the rituals and the symbolisms in the Vedas. Brahman Granths are more process oriented, what kind of rituals and so on. But Aranyaks provide the philosophy behind these rituals and symbolism. And then finally, we have Upanishads. This is all part of the Vedic literature. It's a vast literature history that we have. Upanishads are the later Vedic texts of religious teachings and ideas. You may have heard of some of the Upanishads like Ishopanishad, Kathopanishad, and so on. There are more than 100 Upanishads that exist. They discuss the Vedic philosophy, spiritual knowledge, meditation. They are also termed as the Vedant. They are the final part of the Vedic thought, although there are many other types of books after the Upanishads also, but these are considered as the final part of Vedic thought. And Upanishads have directly dominated the Indian philosophy, religion, life, and so on. Upanishads derive these ideas from Vedas, but what we see in today's Indian philosophy, etc., is directly derived from the Upanishads. And there is a pluralism of ideas. For the same concept, different Upanishads may have different thoughts or prescriptions. Now, this chart might look a little complicated, but just to give you an idea about the diversity of the Vedic literature, Rigved is not just one book. There were originally 21 branches of Rigved. They are called Shakha. So it's possible that different gurus, they followed different branches of Rigved in their own gurukuls and so on. But unfortunately, most of these have been lost over the last thousands of years for whatever reason. Today, only 2 shakhas of Rigved are available, and Shakal is the one that is most popularly used. Yajurved had 101 branches, only 6 are available. Samved had 1,000 or more branches, only 3 are available. Atharved had 9 or 12 branches. There is disagreement on how many branches there were for Atharved, only 2 are available. And we can also see the count of Brahmans and Aranyaks and Upanishads for the various Samhitas in this chart. In this chart, I have given a list of various post-Vedic literature, but I have included some content for your own future reference. We will not have the time to go through all of these contents here. This is just to give you a glimpse of so much of wide range of literature which is available, which is further derivation from the Vedas. Let's look at a third mantra for today. Vishwani Dev Savitar, Duritani Parasuva, Yad Bhadra Tanna Asuva. Dev Savitah is Savita God again. Vishwani Duritani Parasuva. All the evil, all the bad things move away from us. O Sun God, take away everything that is evil or bad. Yad Bhadram Tat Nah Asuva. Whatever is good, beneficial, spiritually beneficial, for our welfare, bring that for us. So these 2 mantras give us an idea about what we request God Savita. We try to take inspiration from Savita for inspiring our mind and removing everything that is evil from our life or bodies. And this also gives an idea about the Vedic dharma, which I'll talk about in detail later, what is dharma, but this just gives an idea about that. Another mantra on the same line of purity of mind and actions is from Atharvaved, Paropehi manas papa. Oh, the evil desires of mind, go away. Kim ashastani shansasi. Why do you utter shameful thoughts? Even in our mind, we have shameful, ugly thoughts. Why do you utter them? Parehi, go away. Na tva kamaye. I don't desire you. I want to have a pure life. Vriksham vanani sanchara. Go away to forest, go to jungle, go far away from me. I don't want you near me. Griheshu goshu me manah. My mind is focused on or should be focused on my household, my actions, my activities, my responsibilities. Another mantra on the purity of mind and actions is Pavmanah Punatuma. Pavman is the purifier. We use different adjectives to refer to the God. Pavman, the purifier, purify me. Why? For Kratve, for performing good deeds. Dakshaya, for excellence. Jivase, for a rejuvenating life. If my thoughts are not pure, I cannot conduct good deeds, I cannot excel, I cannot have a good life. Atho arishtataye, for the spread of non-violence. So you're getting an idea about the Vedic thought, the Vedic dharma from these various mantras that I have selected for today's session. I'm going to switch between discussion of one mantra and some concepts about Vedas. So let's talk about Devta. We talked about Agni Devta, Savita Devta. So the mantras are associated with some devatas, and here it is mentioned that in the first sukta of the first mandal of Rigved, all the 9 mantras are devoted to Agni, but in the second sukta, as you can see here, 1 to 3 are devoted to Vayu, 4 to 6 are devoted to the combination of Indra and Vayu, 7 to 9 are devoted to the combination of Mitra and Varuna. So what is Devta? Devta is a deity, a god, and Vedas have lots of devtas, a large number of them. Some of the prominent devtas are Agni, symbolizes knowledge due to its brightness and the ability to eliminate darkness of ignorance. Indra represents the energy of life. Vayu symbolizes action because Vayu, air, has the property of velocity. Surya is a sun, symbolizes worship. It is a source of brightness. It inspires our minds. Varun is a respected god. Mitra is also a god. Literally, it means friend, but it is also the name of a god. Vishnu is an omnipresent god that organizes the universe. And there are a whole lot of other gods in Vedas. So the question arises, does it mean that we have polytheism? In Hindi, we call it Bahudevtavad, that there are multiple gods in the universe. Max Miller calls it henotheism, that there are multiple gods, but one family, one tribe, one community, one group follows one particular god. And we see that in modern India. Some people are Vaishnav, they follow Vishnu. Some people are Shaiv, they follow Shiv, and so on. So this is henotheism. Or is it monotheism? Is it that all these gods or all these names that we talked about are just the adjectives of the same god? So one branch of Indian popular theory is that these are just the adjectives of different adjectives of the same god. Or is it what is quite often believed? Polytheistic monotheism. What does it mean? This means that in reality there is monotheism. There is only one god, but it has a polytheistic appearance, meaning that there are different names given to the same god. And in fact, there is evidence in Vedas to suggest that it is polytheistic monotheism. Indram, Mitram, Varunam, Agnim, Ahur. Atho divyah sa suparno garutman. Ekam sad vipra bahudha vadanti. Ekam sad vipra bahudha vadanti. This means that the single truth is said in many ways by wise people. And how is it said? Somebody calls the same entity Indra, somebody calls him Mitra, somebody calls him Varun, somebody calls him Agni. It's the same entity, it's the same truth, which is called by different names by wise people. So Indram, Mitram, Varunam, Agnim, Ahur, Atho, Divyah, Sa, Suparno, Garutman, Ekam Sad Vipra Bahudha Vadanti, Agnim, Yamam, Matarishwanam, Ahuru. There is another verse that justifies that there is only one God with different names. Tadev Agnihi. he only is Agni. Tad Aditya, he is Aditya. Tad Vayu, he is Vayu. Tadu Chandramaha, Tadeva Shukram, he is Chandrama, he is Shukra. Tad Brahma, he is Brahma. Ta Sa Prajapati, he is the creator, the ruler of all the creatures. Further, we find in Ved, na tasya pratima asti. There is no portrayal of God, there is no likeness of God, there is no depiction of God. You cannot represent the God with any statue, any particular portrait. There is no likeness of him. Eshoha devaha pradishonu sarvaha. The same God is spread in all the directions. Back to some concepts about Veda. Something very interesting. How the Vedic text was preserved over a long period of time. Vedas were perhaps composed before the evolution of the system of writing, but even later, when the concept of writing evolved, there was difficulty of preserving text written on palm leaves and birch bark. So here is an example of a manuscript on a birch bark, but the longevity of such text would be limited. So there were challenges in maintaining the text. Here is an example of a palm leaf manuscript. They would not have a long life. And also, the Vedic rishis, the gurus, were concerned that copying the text from one manuscript to another could introduce errors in the text. You could make mistakes in that. The rishis were very particular to preserve the purity of Vedic text. And indeed, we have an amazing system, which you are going to have a glimpse of in the next 5 to 10 minutes, of how traditionally Indians preserved the Vedic text with unparalleled fidelity for over 2000 years before the system of writing was used to preserve them. And even after the system of writing was introduced, the oral traditions were continued and they continue till today. We had elaborate mnemonic techniques to memorize and preserve the integrity of the text of the Vedas. So the students in a Gurukul would memorize the entire text of Vedas, the 20,000 mantras, and they would pass on from one generation to another. But there is a possibility that I could remember something wrongly and I pass on the wrong memory to the next person. They did not want to take that risk. So there was a tradition of Vedic chanting and memorizing the same mantra in multiple different ways, somewhat like what in today's computing world we call the parity check or the checksum. That concept was used for the Vedas. So the rishis counted the exact number of words and letters. They used many forms of memorizing the text. So for example, let's take the very first mantra once again. Agnimide purohitam yajyasya devam ritvijam hotaram ratnadhatam. That is called the Samhita part. Then it is broken down. The sandhis are broken down. Agnim, ide, purohitam, yajyasya. Then there is a kram part. If you look at the last line, that gives an example in English. If my text is word 1, word 2, word 3, word 4, they would memorize it as word 1, word 2, word 2, word 3, word 3, word 4. So the first mantra would be Agnim ide purohitam, purohitam yajyasya. And then to clarify that purohitam is not the purohit, the pandit, but it is puraha hitam. So purohitam iti puraha hitam. And then further, yajyasya devam ritvijam iti ritvijam. That means that's the end of a sentence. Bhutaram ratnadhatamam iti ratnadhatamam. That is again the end of a sentence. So they would memorize the Ved mantra in this manner also. There were 11 ways of memorizing the mantras. We have seen 3, the original text, the pad part, the kram part, which takes first and second, second and third, third and fourth. And then there are even more complex ones, like jata part. Agnim ide agnim, agnim ide. Ide purohitam, purohitam ide purohitam. Purohitam yajnasya, yajnasya purohitam, purohitam yajnasya. Yajnasya devam, devam yajnasya, yajnasya devam, and so on. And even more. So in this case, we take the first and second word, and then the last and the penultimate word, then the second and third word, and then the last but one and last but two words. So Agnim Ide going from front, and from the other side, Ritvijamiti means that it is the last word. Ide Prohitam, second and third word, and Ritvijam to Devam, so the last and the previous word in the same sentence, and so on. So if I have word 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, somebody would remember them as word 1, word 2, word 6, word 5, word 2, word 3, word 5, word 4, word 3, word 4, word 4, word 3, and so on. Complex process, but multiple different versions of memorizing the same mantra, so that if you make a mistake in one way of memorizing, it will be caught from the other ways of memorizing. You could not be making the same mistake in 10 different formats of the same mantra. Imagine such a complex way of preserving the fidelity of the mantras. We talk about the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Of course, they are wonders, architectural wonders, wonders of physical labor, 7 wonders of the modern world, architectural wonders. But the way Vedic text has been preserved for thousands of years is, to my mind, the most impressive wonder of the world, where so many people just memorize the text and transmit it from one generation to another, and we don't have a single letter out of place in 20,000 verses of the 4 Vedas. Back to another mantra. In fact, this is related to the power of the mind. Yat jagrato duram udaiti devam. It talks about our mind. The mind that wanders far when it is awake. Tadu suptasya tathaiveti. It similarly wanders when we are asleep. Our mind is not stationary even in sleep. We dream. Our mind goes everywhere. Duram gamam jyotisham jyoti ekam. That is definitely the light of the lights that carries us far away. Tanme mana, that my mind, Shiv sankalpam astu. Oh God, my mind should have good, pious goals and determination. Mind wanders everywhere, but I don't want it to wander into evil thoughts, evil actions. Let it be dedicated to good thoughts, pious determination. Let's talk about dharma. In today's context, dharma means religion. But in Vedas, dharma is not used as religion. Manusmriti says, Vedah akhilah dharma moolam. Manusmriti is also not talking about Ved being the source of religion, the Hindu religion. Dharma in Vedas and Vedic literature essentially means virtue, righteousness. Vedic dharma is about the righteousness, the prescribed code of conduct. Of course, dharma has many other meanings also. For example, the nature. An animal has certain dharma, it has certain nature, but that's also not the meaning of dharma in Vedas. It is righteousness, the virtues, the prescribed code of conduct that we, the human beings, should have. Manusmriti talks about 10 characteristics of dharma, and it is not about any religious or ritualistic aspects. These 10 characteristics of dharma are firmness of mind, pardon, kindness to people, self-control, staying away from the evil tendencies, not stealing, personal cleanliness, purity, control on the 5 parts of our knowledge and the 5 parts of our body through which we take actions. Dharma is about wisdom, it is about knowledge, it is about truth, it is about lack of anger or calmness. It's not about rituals, it is not about Hindu or any other religion as we understand. The concept of dharma is righteousness. So here are some more examples of Vedic dharma. We already saw some examples of Vedic dharma earlier. Remove all the evils from my mind. Evil thoughts, go away to the forest. Don't be with me. This one says, Isha Vasyam idam sarvam. All of this that we have, what we see, is due to God, not because of us. Yat kimcha jagatyam jagat, everything that exists in the universe is due to God. Tena tyaktena bhunjitha. Therefore, since it is not yours, consume everything with the mentality of detachment, what Gandhiji called trusteeship. It is the sense of trusteeship. It is not yours. Ma gridha, don't be greedy. Kasyas with dhanam, after all, whose is this wealth? Not yours. So this is one aspect of Vedic dharma. I'm going to talk about a few more aspects of the Vedic dharma. Sangachadvam, walk together collectively, gracefully. Samvadadvam, talk together, communicate together gracefully. Samho manansi janatam, know your minds well, have clarity of thought. Deva bhagam yatha purve sanjanana upasate, wise, noble people fulfill their respective responsibilities, like the 10 characteristics of dharma that we talked about, as always, not at some selected points of time, but always they do it. Another mantra highlighting Vedic dharma, collaboration. This, by the way, is the first verse that we are seeing, which is not in the poetry form. It is a prose. Drite drihma. Drite is the eliminator of enmity. Drihma, make me strong. For what? Mitrasya ma chakshusha sarvani bhutani samikshantam. May all creatures see me from the eyes of a friend. They have a friendly outlook to me. Mitrasya aham chakshusha sarvani bhutani samikshe. I also look at everybody as a friend. We all look at each other as friend. Mitrasya chakshusha samiksha mahe. We all see each other's like friends. So it talks about collaboration, and not just in my community. There is no restriction in Vedic text anywhere. The Vedic texts don't have any class system. Somebody sent me a question earlier today. Are Vedas only for Brahmins? Are only Brahmins allowed to listen to or study Vedas? No, there is no such mention anywhere in the Vedas. A lot of such text has been introduced in the later literature, which is a tragedy according to me. Vedas talk about universal rights, universal equality. So it is not only Brahmins, but Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. And in those days, the son of a Brahmin was not necessarily a Brahmin. You might become a Vaishya. The son of a Shudra might become an intellectual and therefore a Brahmin. There was another question, by the way, whether Vedic mantras can be taught to women. Well, there is no discrimination against women either in the Vedas. In fact, there are rishis in Vedas, rishikas, in fact, who are women. There are devtas, goddesses, which are women. And Vedas don't make any discrimination against women in any form. Here is another mantra about Vedic dharma, or the karma aspect of that, which says, Kurvan neveha karmani, only by performing actively the actions, my responsibilities. Jiji vishet shatam samaha. Now it is actually shatam, but with sandhi, the compounding, it becomes chatam. Jiji vishet shatam samaha. Jiji vishet shatam samaha. One should aspire to live 100 years only by actively performing actions, not by inaction. Evam tvai nanyat hetosti. There is no other way to remain detached in this world. Na karma lipyate nare. By doing this, by performing the actions and wanting to live a long life in an active manner, the actions don't bind you. The performed actions don't bind you. This particular mantra is also the basis of the famous shlok from Gita, which perhaps we have heard so often. Karmanyevadhikaraste. Your right is only to action. Haleshu kadachana. You never have the right to the results or the fruits or the outcomes of your action. Do your actions, fulfill your responsibilities, but without any expectations of the results from them. Ma karma phal hetur bhu. Don't become the purpose of the results of the actions. You should not perform actions with the objective that I will get these benefits. No. Perform the actions because that's your only right. That's the responsibility that you have. Ma te sangha astu akarmani. Don't get associated with inaction. So this becomes a basis for a lot of philosophy that we have in Gita. Another example of Vedic dharma about truth. And this also is, by the way, in the prose form, not in the poetry form, from Yajurved. Agni, O God Agni, Vratapati, the god of taking the vows. We take vrat. We say that I'm taking this vrat, a determination. What am I asking Agni? Vratam charishyami. I will implement the vow. Which one? That comes in the last line. Idam aham panritat satyam upayami. That I go away from falsehood. My life has perhaps a lot of falsehoods. I want to go away from all of that to truth. We have tamasoma jyotirgamaya, etc. There it says asatoma sadgamaya. Take me away from asat, falsehood, to sat, that is truth. That comes from here. And the rishi is knowing that it is not easy to go away from falsehood to truth, so he makes kind of multiple statements. Vratam charishyami. I will implement this vow. Tachakayam. God, may I be able to fulfill this. Tanme ratyatam. God, may it be successful for me. Please give me courage. Please give me strength that I go away from falsehood to truth. As I keep saying, I'm toggling between mantras and some concepts about Vedas. So here is a brief mention of some commentators of Vedas. In the Middle Ages, we have kind of completely preserved commentaries from Skanda Swami in the 7th century, Overt, Mahidhar, and Sayan. Some of the modern commentators include Swami Dayanand Saraswati, the founder of Arya Samaj, Swami Vidyanand Videha, the founder of Ved Sansthan, Shripad Damodar Satavlekar, who has published the edited version, corrected version of all the Samhitas. And a lot of Western scholars have done extensive, honest work on the Vedas, including Max Muller, Ralph Griffith, Rudolf Roth, Horace Wilson, Weber, Whitney, and so on. There are, in fact, many others. Back to a mantra. Vedas talk about creation of universe. In fact, there are a lot of mantras where the rishis have tried to figure out how the universe was created. This is one of the simple mantras in their understanding of the creation of universe. Hiranyagarbha samavartatagre. In the beginning, there was a golden womb, which is called the God. So we have the Big Bang, and Hiranyagarbha actually means a golden womb from which everything originated. Bhutasya jatah patih ek asid. Only he existed in the beginning. He was the creator of all the creatures. Sa dadhar prithvim dyam utemam. He holds the earth and the heavens. Kasmai devaya havisha vidheva. For that God, we present our offerings. And back to some concept. I hope this balance between some mantras, text, and some concepts of Vedas is of interest, so that different kinds of different aspects of Vedas can be understood. So this is the last point that I'll talk about, hermeneutics. Hermeneutics refers to the theory and methodology of interpretation. There is biblical hermeneutics, how to interpret the biblical text. Similarly, there is Vedic hermeneutics. There is a well-defined branch of explaining how the Vedic mantras are to be interpreted. I'll just give you a glimpse of that. The starting point is something called the Pad part. We actually saw an example of that. Agnim ide purohitam was broken down into Agnim ide purohitam yajyasya devam ritvijam. So this is the oldest and the simplest and concise explanation of the characteristics of words, including the compounds, sandhis, samasas, etc. So it explains that Purohitam is actually Puraha Hitam. Then there is Nighantu. Nighantu is a thesaurus of Vedic words. Many words have changed their meaning over a period of time. It happens in all the languages. The words change their meanings. A simple example being dharma. Dharma in Vedas is not what we talk about today. So how do we know what is the meaning of many words in Vedas? So Nighantu is a thesaurus of Vedic words. Synonyms are presented. These words have the same meaning. These different sets of words have the same meaning and so on. And then there are detailed commentaries on Nighantus called Nirukta. And then there are further detailed commentaries on Nirukta written by later Middle Ages and earlier scholars. One of the 6 branches of philosophy, Darshan Shastra, is called Mimamsa Darshan. It is concerned with hermeneutics of Vedas, the Samhitas and Brahmins. It also deals with aspects of epistemology, the philosophy with the knowledge, the philology. How do we study language in oral and written text? All of this is covered in the Mimamsa Darshan. So these are the ancient texts which help us to interpret Vedas in the correct manner. Unfortunately, we find that some of the writers from the Middle Ages or today sometimes they distort the meaning of Vedic mantras. And how do we say that they distort? Because those meanings don't match with what is given in the Nighantu, the Nirukt, and what is prescribed by the Mimamsa Darshan, the texts that are closer to the Vedic era than what we are in. Last mantra on family life. Ihaiv stam ma viyaushtam. It addresses a couple, husband and wife. You two stay in this world. Vishwam ayur yashnutam. Achieve a full life. Kridanto putraihi napti. Playing with your children and grandchildren. Moda manav sve grihe. Live happily in your house. There are a lot of mantras about the family life. There are mantras about the personal life and personal philosophy. There are mantras on social responsibility. There are mantras on the Rashtra, the country, the nation. And there are mantras on Vishwa Bandhutva, the world. So we are just in time to begin wrapping up. I'll perhaps take another 5 minutes. I'll summarize and also give some pointers for further reading. And I will also mention what next, the further seminars that we are going to have. So as a summary, we have talked about 10 topics related to Vedas today. What is the relevance of Vedas? An overview of the topics that are covered in Vedas, the concept of rishis, an introduction to the Vedic literature, Samhita, Brahman, Aranya, Upanishad, and the later texts, polytheistic monotheism, preservation by oral traditions, the Vedic dharma and the karma, a brief mention of some of the commentators of Vedas, and hermeneutics. We also looked at some mantras that dealt with these 11 topics, and in parenthesis I given the mantra number or the verse number. Praise of Agni, Gayatri mantra, which is on meditation on the sun, purity of mind and actions. We talked about 3 mantras for this. Monotheism, mind, power and control, trusteeship, collaboration, karma and action, truthfulness, creation of the universe, and family life. So these are the 11 topics from the Vedic mantras that we talked about, in addition to these 10 conceptual aspects about the Vedas. Here are the 15 mantras in these 2 slides with the full text and the address, the reference number of the mantras given. And finally, where next? If today's session has stoked your curiosity and interest to learn more about the Vedas, where do we go further? So I'm going to recommend some of the readings. Most of these are in Hindi, but there are some in English. Here are some books which are published by Ved Sansthan, from where today's session has been brought to you. Swami Vidyanand Videh, the founder of Ved Sansthan, has written this excellent book called Vedalok in 2 parts. These two books contain commentaries on about 750 selected verses from the four Vedas, covering a very wide range of topics. Almost every topic that you find in the Vedas, some sample of that or the other, you will have in these 750 selected verses that are given in this book. Ved Vyakhya Granth, Swami Vidyanand Videh and Sri Abhadev Sharma have written commentaries on Yajurved, first 20 chapters and the 39th and 40th chapters. So you can go through these for commentaries on part of the Yajurved. An exposition of the Vedas by Swami Vidyanand Videha is on the first sukta from Rigved, the first chapter from Yajurved. Similarly, the first sukta from Atharved and Samved are covered in detail in this. And there are many other books on Vedas published by Ved Sansthan, authored by the founder, Swami Vidyanand Videha, and the second president, Sri Abhadev Sharma. I would like to also mention many other sources, books. Vedon mein kya hai? By Pravesh Saxena. She is an eminent scholar of Vedas associated with Ved Sansthan. She is also the editor of a quarterly magazine that we published on Vedas called Ved Savita. This book is a very simple, easy to read introduction to Vedas. If you're looking at the original Samhitas, there is Rigved Samhita published by Swadhyay Mandal Pardi, the original pure Sanskrit text, and likewise there is text for Rigved, Yajurved, Samved and Atharved. Rigvedadi Bhashya Bhumika by Swami Dayananda Saraswati. I strongly recommend this as another book to read to get an overview about the Vedic thought. Swami Dayananda Saraswati was the founder of Arya Samaj, and he presents different topics of Vedas. For example, what are the Vedic thoughts on the universe creation? What are the Vedic thoughts on karma, dharma, and so on? Excellent book, strongly recommended for anybody who wants to go a little deeper into the study of Vedic thought. Swami Dayananda Saraswati also wrote a part of the Rigved Bhashya. He could reach up to the 7th chapter in his lifetime, so he could not complete it. He has written the complete Bhashya on Yajurved. Shri Damodar Satavlekar has written simple commentary on all the four Vedas, Rigved ka Subodh Bhashya, similarly Yajurved ka Subodh Bhashya, Samved Arth Sahib, and Atharved ka Subodh Bhashya. So if you want to know the meaning of all the 20,000 mantras from one single person, Shripad Damodar Satavlekar's books are the right place to go to. A lot of other people have written books. Sri Aurobindo, for example, has written The Secret of the Veda, and there is a Hindi translation of that, Vedarth Rahasya. In addition to these books, Ved Sansthan conducts a lot of programs. We used to have a lot of regular in-person programs before coronavirus, and these days we have a lot of online programs. All the activities of Ved Sansthan are completely free. There is no charge, no fee for any of our programs. However, donations are welcome. If you find the activities of Ved Sansthan in spreading the knowledge about Vedas interesting, you would be requested to help Ved Sansthan with financial contribution and possibly other kind of help also, maybe helping us to reach out to other people, promotion of these activities, etc. But as I said, all activities are free. There is no charge for anything. We have a lot of scholars, some full-time working in Ved Sansthan, and many other scholars on a kind of part-time voluntary basis. And we have these days we have online programs. There are 2 lectures every week, usually on Wednesdays and Saturdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Normally these programs are in Hindi, but starting today, we are beginning to introduce some of the lectures in English also. We also have classes on Sankhya Darshan. We have classes on this going on 3 days a week. Our resident Vedic scholar, Sri Devkrishna Das, conducts these classes regularly. So we have this program. Also in the works, we have a program on panel discussion with the scholars of Ved Sansthan on various questions that have been raised by the participants of these webinars. And we will also have a lot of in-depth sessions on Vedas. Today's session was just a glimpse of what the Vedas are. We plan to have more detailed sessions, a couple of sessions on Rigved, a couple of sessions on Yajurved, one session on Samved, because Samved has very few original mantras, a couple of sessions on Atharved. Similarly, we plan to have sessions on Upanishads, the Gita, Yog Darshan, maybe some other darshans also. And we'll have these in English as well as in Hindi. So here are the contact details. The address, it's in Rajouri Garden, New Delhi. The URL is ved-sansthan.org. The phone numbers are given here. The email ID is given here. And you can contact there Shri Virendra Mishra for any office work. And Shri Devkrishna Das is a resident research scholar.